So how does honey get from here, where the honeybees are, into a jar like this? Well, we did a honey extraction at Capella Ranch this weekend. Let me show you. So the bees have way more honey than they need, and when they're building it, they build it in the upper boxes called honey supers. Normally, their babies are down in the lower boxes in what we call brood boxes. So these honey supers get completely filled up, and when the bees start making honey, it starts as nectar, and that's got about 70% moisture. When it drops down to about 20% moisture, the bees put a capping over the top of it, a wax capping. And that wax capping protects the honey until they'll need it later, generally in the winter, or until some clever beekeeper like me comes along to take it. So what I do is I go out and I open up every single beehive that we've got, and I inspect every frame that the bees have been building honey on. And a lot of those frames have wax that's covering them, and it looks like this. And when it looks like that, that means it's a frame we can take out because it's completely honey all the way through. So I go through all of the boxes and I look for frames that are good to come out. Usually it's a whole box full at a time, but I check every single frame, and then we brush the bees off, and then we convince them to stay with the hive so that we can take the honey out and bring that honey back to Capella Ranch and do the extraction. So we brush the bees off, and then we carry it off and put it on the back of the truck. And then we continue doing that until we've made it through all of the beehives that need to be inspected, and we've removed all of the frames that we can remove. So we bring everything back to Capella Ranch, and here in our garage we go through, set up our extraction process, where we have our table for uncapping, and then we have the extraction that will happen in the centrifuge, and then we'll fill up these 5-gallon buckets. The very first step is to uncap the frames. That wax coating I mentioned earlier, when the bees have got it down to 20% moisture, we have to scrape all of that wax off so that the honey will come out in the centrifuge. So we carefully use these special uncapping forks to either scrape and pull the wax off, and then sometimes we have to use a little special fork to kind of get around the edges where you can't use the bigger fork. So as we scrape off 4 frames. We're using here, this is what's called a tangential extractor, which means we put the 4 frames in and they face outside the long way. And we spin it on one side, and then we have to turn them over and spin it again on the other side to get the honey out. We'll slow down the video here because you can actually see the honey coming out of the frame and hitting the sides of the extractor. Isn't that cool? So as the extractor spins, the honey comes out and lands on the side, and then it drips down, and then we come around to the gate at the front, and here's the magic part. We open the gate, and look at that. Now, what is all that stuff in the honey? What are those chunks? That's just beeswax, because when we spin it, some of that wax that we uncapped is still kind of stuck to it. So we need to strain it. And we run it through a 2-screen strainer, one to take out the big chunks and then one to take out some pretty fine chunks. But we don't filter it. Filtering is a much more aggressive process that takes out the good stuff from honey. We leave our honey raw, and oh, it is just amazing. After we collect those frames, uncap those frames, run them through the centrifuge, and have the honey into 5-gallon buckets, then we bring it inside, where we'll pour it into 3 different size jars. We like to use these mason jars because they're just so reusable. We do 10s, 20 ounces, and 5s, and then we add a top, and we add a label, and that's how we get the honey all the way from the beehives into the jars here at Capella Ranch.